Okay, so that should be good.
Well, hello and welcome to our Zoom education session today on the topic of learning the ropes. My name is Sarah Cook and I'm a public education coordinator at the Alzheimer's Society of Peterborough, Kawartha Lakes, Northumberland, and Haliburton. And it's my pleasure to bring back Anne-Marie Peters, who is our social worker with the First Link program, to provide this education session today. She's going to tell us a little bit about the Learning the Ropes program and also a little bit about MCI, which stands for mild cognitive impairment. So I'm going to turn it over to Anne. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Shelby. So this is a program that I will tell you later how we offer it at the Alzheimer's Society, but Learning the Ropes for Living with MCI is a program developed out of Baycrest Health Sciences in Toronto, focused on optimizing cognitive health through lifestyle choices, memory training, and psychosocial support. It is aimed at older adults and their close family members, friends who are living in the community and are experiencing mild cognitive impairment. Now, we call it MCI. So what that refers to is cognitive decline, commonly involving memory, although there are other types, but it's usually involving memory, that is greater than expected for age, but does not markedly compromise independence in carrying out daily responsibilities. And when they talk about daily responsibilities, what they're referring to are managing your finances, getting around town, taking medication, doing household chores, cooking, shopping, and keeping track of most of your appointments. So in this program, the topics that are covered are education about MCI and lifestyle factors for promoting cognitive health and reducing the risk of dementia. They talk about memory training involving practical strategies aimed at improving everyday remembering, such as memory for names, appointments, location of items, and things to do. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And then there's another component around family support focused on discovering approaches for effectively living with a relative experiencing MCI. So I need to just state as a disclaimer that for today's presentation, the goal is to share the strategies from this program for those who experience normal aging or may have a diagnosis of amnestic MCI, which is a memory-related MCI. It is not intended and will not be effective for people with a dementia diagnosis. And I will explain. So as you see the three columns, I will start with normal aging. Now, normal aging of the brain begins at around the age of 40, and it is gradual, so don't panic, okay? As you will see on the slide, it involves occasional lapses in memory and behaviors that can look like dementia. We've probably all had moments where we thought, oh my God, am I getting dementia? And you're not. It is normal to get more distracted, to experience the impact of stress, poor sleep, and the pitfalls of trying to multitask, because we are not the people we were when we were 20. We can't get by on little sleep, get up, go to work, and function with a couple of cups of coffee and be able to sail through the day. We also live in a world where we are required to process far more information than was expected in earlier times. And we now live in a digital age where we are inundated. So if you've ever seen one of those news news channels where they've got the ticker going across with the financial and then the sports scores and then the weather, and then they've got the news running underneath and then the person talking, it's a lot to process. So nowadays we have a lot of information. So for example, how many PIN numbers do you have to remember now? How many passwords do you need to remember to get into certain programs? Um, how many times have we walked from one room to the next and went, "Oh, wait a second, what was I coming for again?" Um, this doesn't mean you have dementia. It just means that you're experiencing normal aging. And this is something we all experience. How many times have we looked for our keys or our phone? It happens, well, for me, it happens a little more than I'd like to admit, but um, and I know I don't mind missing my dentist appointment, but occasionally we forget things. And that's okay. That's part of normal aging. The difference is that it's occasional. It's not all the time. Okay, it's not happening on a daily basis. It's not happening persistently. Dementia is more evident as illustrated by the 10 warning signs listed in the Alzheimer's Society brochure. And I've listed some of them on the slide, and I'll read them to you. Memory loss that affects day-to-day abilities, difficulty performing familiar tasks, problems with language, disorientation with time and space, impaired judgment, misplacing things, changes in mood and behavior, changes in personality, loss of initiative. And so the difference here is that the person who's been diagnosed with dementia requires support in their day-to-day life function. So the degree of support is going to change, and it's going to be different depending on which stage they're at. So if they're early stage, they're not needing a lot of support, but at the same point, there's been a diagnosis and there's been a recognition that there is something going on. Okay? Now, MCI falls right smack in the middle. And it's different from dementia. It has some symptoms, but this is where it's a little different. So I'll list the symptoms and then I'll explain the distinction. So it's repeating questions or comments within a conversation or within 24 hours. Experiencing more frequent memory slips, often with bothersome consequences such as forgetting to attend a coffee date or failing to remember an important event. Others comment that they've noticed you are experiencing some memory problems, so it's a little noticeable to others. Withdrawing from former pastimes or opportunities to socialize because of a decline in thinking skills, especially memory. You kind of don't want to go out because you're like, I'm struggling to keep up with conversations. Some skills such as planning a vacation or organizing schedule of activities is now a little harder to do and takes more time. You can still do it, but it just takes so much longer. Difficulty finding your way around in a place that you should be familiar with. Difficulty remembering names of people that you know. So this becomes a little more challenging and it takes a little longer. So the distinction between MCI and dementia is that you are still functionally independent. You can still pay your bills. You can still take care of your household. You can still cook. You can still do all those things to function in your day-to-day life. And you don't need assistance or support with that. But you're starting to have more than usual issues where with normal aging, it's just, well, yeah, I forgot that coffee date. Sorry about that. I'm going to make sure I write that down next time. Okay? And that's the difference. So now when we look at the brain, the reason people diagnosed with dementia will struggle with these strategies is because they have been identified as having, through a CT scan or an MRI, damage to areas of the brain that will prevent them from being able to fully communicate to all areas of the brain. And the two areas of the brain that are key for the strategies that we're talking about today are the frontal lobe, which is the red section, and the temporal lobe, which is the purple section. In the frontal lobe is the brain region called the prefrontal cortex, which is known as the boss or the queen bee of the brain. Now, I'm being tongue in cheek, but I live with someone who teaches the physiology of the brain at a university level, and his terms were far more complex, and I wanted to have some fun with this. The remaining components of the brain are like the worker bees that take orders from the prefrontal cortex. This prefrontal cortex performs the strategic control of all other areas of the brain. Therefore, damage to any area in the prefrontal lobe will not allow communication to other areas of the brain to execute these strategies effectively. So now we talk about this, and I know Sarah and Carolyn and Shelby have talked about in education how important executive functioning is in being able in our memory and how we are able to perform. But in dementia, executive functioning is very critical because it's how we gather information in our environment, and we take that information, and the brain has to work with that information in order to respond. And if there is impairment in that area, the brain cannot take that information and work with it effectively for us to process it and to store it. Okay? So the strategies that we are focusing on today improve our ability to process new information and to help maintain or hold information for retrieval at a later date. It is called encoding and storage. These processes happen primarily in the prefrontal cortex, and storage and retrieval happen via communication in the temporal lobe. So again, I've kind of simplified this explanation. And as you can see, the brain is very interconnected, and it's a complex organ. But the key here is that if we can't take in new information and process it correctly, the rest of the brain can't use it properly for us at a later time. So if I tell my colleague, okay, I'm going to meet you in a half an hour so that we can talk about this client, and she can't take that information and process it and hold it, then she's not going to be there in a half an hour because something in the prefrontal cortex has prevented her from processing that information and communicating that into a place where she can store it. And that's going to be frustrating because if you can't take it in, you can't use it. So these strategies really help us try to benefit from that. And so we're going to talk about those. So ROPES is an acronym. So we like our acronyms. So I don't know if some of you remember from math when we were kids, BEDMAS. So brackets, exponents, division, multiplication, addition, subtraction. So ROPES is like an acronym, and we find fun ways to remember things. So the R stands for record, where we write things down. O stands for organize, keep in the same spot. And I will say to you that all of that I'm going to tell you, you already know. This is common sense. This wasn't this beautiful epiphany that came out of this lab. It's all researched, and it's, people studied this. They tried out this program. They saw the benefits, but it's all common sense. And we've heard this from our grandmothers. We know this is, and when we hear it, we're going to go, oh, and some of you may already do it. So don't be surprised. This isn't coming from high up on the mountains from the secret cave. P is for practice. We repeat new information. E is for elaborate. We give new meaning to items. And S is for stop, see it, say it. And really, that one is a great one because it really requires us to pay attention, because a lot of our issues and with these strategies involve using more than one sense. And I wrote them down because I had trouble remembering what they were. So they require us using our visual, our auditory, and our touch to process information, which research shows us is more effective in encoding and storing information and new information. So if we do more than one, if we use more than one sense and we engage in more than one sense, we actually remember information better. So if Sarah's telling me a number and I'm writing it down and I'm saying it out loud, I'm going to remember that number better than if she's just telling me and I just say it in my head, okay? And then the other aspect is I'm paying attention. How often do we not pay attention to what we're doing while we're doing it? I can't tell you how many times I'm taking my medication and I'm thinking about something else, or someone's talking to me and I'm not even noticing that I'm putting the pill in my mouth and swallowing. And which reminds me, I didn't take my medication this morning. So there you go. I need to take, so I got to write that down. I got to write down take medication. Okay. So the whole idea is we have to start paying attention to what we're doing while we're doing it, so that we go, oh yeah, I did take my meds. Because what we do is we come into the house, we drop our keys one place, drop the phone, all of a sudden we're doing all these other things. And then an hour later when we're looking for our stuff, we didn't pay attention to where we put our stuff, okay? That's the problem, not your memory necessarily, our focus and attention, okay? So we start with record. Now, some of you probably do this. Actually, I'm sure most of you already do this already. And so if you do this, please, I'm not suggesting that you don't, but this is just some suggestions to kind of rethink or to add a few things. What you want to do is, I'll first mention that research shows that the act of actually recording information by writing it down or entering it into a computer or a personal digital device or a smartphone helps you remember it better. I know that when I do that, it's like I still remember the date for my dog's grooming, even though I put it in my phone 2 months ago. So that kind of paying attention and typing it in was a way of getting that into storage. It really does help. You don't necessarily have to go back to it, and that's what research shows. It's a good idea also to keep routines to review your memory organizer. And so what you want to do is pick a memory organizer that works for you. If you have one, great. And you can pick any one of these types. Now, for some of us who have different aspects, so for me, I have a work one and I have a home one and I have a phone. So I go between three, but I make sure that every day I review, okay, what's my day? So I review, okay, and then what I do is I have my work one and I review the work one and I go, okay, today I need to make these phone calls, I need to do this. And then I have sticky notes. Sticky notes are my best friend, okay? And I have them all over my planner because they're oh, wait a second, I have to do something, and I put it on, and then I transfer it where it needs to go. And I also use my phone to record information like appointments and things. Now, some of you may be comfortable with a calendar. So again, pick the organizer that works for you. And then you look at the types of information that we've talked about. The important information, and again, appointments, calendars are great for it because it's visual. You look on the calendar, you go this week, they're like, oh man, I have like 3 doctor's appointments. And for some of you, that's a reality, right? Um, and then you have your to-do list. I recommend the sticky lined post-it notes because then you can write a to-do list and go, we got to cut the grass, we got to call so-and-so, we got to do this. And then what you can do is you can cross it off. And it feels so good to cross it off. And then you have your temporary information, which could be, I need to know this for a little bit and then I can get rid of it. And then you have your permanent information, which is like phone numbers. So how many remember their phone numbers from when they were children of their friends? And okay, and why do you think you did? Because guess what we did? We had those phones, and I'm aging myself because I'm old. And we had to dial that phone number every single time. Right? I still remember my parents' phone number. Like, I just look at the dial pad and I'm like, oh yeah, I got this, right? I don't know my cell number. I had to memorize it because I don't dial my number anymore. I don't dial people's numbers, and we'll play with this after. So I got to write people's numbers down because if thereby the grace of the powers that be, I have to actually walk to another phone and dial a number. I better have my memory organizer with a list of numbers that goes, oh, I gotta get hold of, I gotta call my husband's work. I don't know his number at work anymore. I haven't had to call it in ages because his cell phone doesn't work. Crap, I gotta call him at work. I gotta write that down. So you want your permanent, so phone numbers, and I had a great list here. Passwords, directions, medication lists. These are things that you go, I need to know this, and I have all my health card numbers all together for my family because if one of my kids says, I can't find my health card, I do have a bit of a, you know, what do you mean you can't find your health card number? But at least I have it so that if we have to go to the clinic, I'm like, okay, I have the number. So just type it in and see if it works. So this is the kind of stuff that you want in your memory organizer. And the reason you want it, when all this information is one place and portable, you can take it to an appointment and then you can figure out, okay, let's book an appointment, and you can see when you're available, you can get organized. You can have access to what you need and make decisions and record new information right away. You can have a little notepad or a part of your day or your planner that has a place where you can write down what the doctor says. Because we know that when you go to the doctor's office or an appointment, you will forget 50% of what they said the moment you step out of the door. So you might as well bring a pen and paper and go, can you say that again? Because that sounds really important. But what I recommend to you is think about your life, think about what works, what you need to know, what's important to you, and design your memory organizer in a way that fits for you. If you're one of those people where you can kind of just bring a notepad and then come home and sit down with a cup of tea and put it in your calendar and write it in your journal and process it, that's even great too. If you don't want to use a phone, that's fine. But have a way to put all your information in one place. Now, the best friend of record is organize. And there's two components of this. So again, I sort of illustrated, and usually when I do groups, I do a role play of what I look like, what I used to look like when I came home, where I just threw everything around and then spent 20 minutes looking for everything because I didn't pay attention to where I put it. So part of the problem that we have is that we're not paying attention to what we do with where we put stuff when we put it places. Okay, so that's not a memory problem, that's an attention problem, and we're not paying attention. So after I took this training, I was like, oh, so now what it recommends is you go into your house and you decide what are the things I need to have access to that are really important. And then you walk into your house and you decide, where am I going to put this? Now, this is grandma's advice. This is a place for everything and everything in its place. Like, it's common sense, right? And it's a habit that you need to establish. But it will save you so much time. I have so much more time because I'm not calling my phone from my son's cell phone, looking and walking around listening for the buzz because I turn off my ringer. Like, this is valuable time that I could be sitting reading a book or going for a walk. So you pick places and you design your space in a way that goes, when I get home, I'm going to take a breath. I'm going to put my keys on the thing. I have a place for my keys. I put my wallet in one spot. I have 8 pairs of cheaters that I strategically have around the house. There's a depot for the pair that I have if I'm wearing them. And I put my phone in a little station, and it's okay. And then once that's all put away, it's like, okay, then you can talk to me. So it's just a matter of making decisions about, now you don't have to do this with everything in your house, because honestly, it's not necessary if other aspects of your life are not disrupted. But boy, is it ever frustrating if you can't find your medication and you're going to a doctor's appointment because your blister pack or something's kind of disheveled on a pile of papers on the table, okay? Or you need some important paperwork. It's like, it might be helpful to kind of have some sense of, let's get this organized. And then the other piece for that, because this is the question that really kind of stuck with me, is, where do you keep your toothbrush? Right? It's probably not in the garage. It's probably in the bathroom, because that's where you brush your teeth. So when we use that logic, this gets us to think of, well, if there's things that are important to me that I need when I leave the house, because a lot of these things we need because, right, I take my medication in the kitchen, so it would make sense. Or if I take them before bed, it would make sense to keep them beside my bed. You know, like, it, again, you think about what works for you and you set up a system that allows you to be cued visually and go, okay, this works. And you can see it. And it also allows you to just get organized around a routine. So the same thing with the day planner, as I mentioned, or the memory organizer. In the morning, I grab my organizer and I open it up. I go, okay, this is my day today, and I'm going to review. Or once a week, I'm going to go, okay, this is our week. So I've got to start getting I got to think about what's coming up. Okay. It takes some time, but it might save you some energy and decrease some stress, because there's nothing worse than thinking you've lost your wallet. I've had that happen. I've seen it happen. It's not pretty. So practice. This one is awesome. Okay. So practice retrieval by rehearsing the information or skill that you want to remember. So if you tell me something, like a name. So someone says a name to me and I say, okay, Robert, 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 Robert. That's not helpful, okay? I'm just repeating the name. I'm not engaging my memory yet, okay? I'm just repeating the name. So what I'm wanting to do is at first practice by repeatedly retrieving the information over short intervals, okay? Later, practice retrieving the information over longer intervals. And research shows that repeatedly retrieving information over spaced intervals, as you can see at the bottom of the slide, intervals of time, is the best way to remember it, because you need to test your memory. So at first, I meet someone. So say I meet someone and they say that their name is Joseph. And I go, okay, hi, Joseph. And I never say their name again. And then we start talking. Guess what happens? Joseph's name is gone, right? Because I'm so engrossed in the conversation and I am so into this conversation that that name is gone. And then I'm in the middle of the conversation going, I can't remember. This is a common experience. It's not because you have dementia, okay? This is not it. It's a very common experience. It's because we're so engrossed that we didn't rehearse that name. So the trick is this. You're talking to someone, they go, hi, I'm so-and-so, and oh, nice to meet you. You say the name. Oh, nice to meet you, Joseph. And then in your head, you go, Joseph. And then in 30 seconds, Joseph. Okay, in a minute, Joseph. Another 5 minutes. Well, that's interesting, Joseph. What about, another 10 minutes? Oh, hey, do you want to meet Joseph? Okay. So again, you're using the name. And then in a half an hour, oh, okay. Oh, that's so cool, Joseph. And then in an hour, in your mind, you go, oh, that's right. I was talking to Joseph. So what you're doing with the spaced interval is not only are you rehearsing the name, you're testing your memory, okay? And you keep practicing to making sure it's in your working memory and pulling it out, okay? So this is a really great strategy. So I did this when I had to learn a PIN number because I almost got scammed on one of my credit cards. So I had to learn a whole new PIN, which broke my heart because I loved my PIN number. And I did this for a whole day. Now I'll never forget this PIN number. I've got it like down pat. But all through the day, I kept rehearsing this PIN number. So at first I kept rehearsing it, and then I did it over, and then a half an hour. And then at the end of the day, I was like, okay, what's the PIN number? Got it. But in between, I kept engaging and doing things, and then I'd stop. At one point, I was singing in my car, and I was like, wait, what's the PIN number? And I pulled it out. So the best friend of practice is elaborate. So so they kind of work hand in hand. So this strategy helps you, and this is where you're gonna learn that I'm a little crazy, but it works. And this helps you remember by making the information meaningful to you in some way. So you can find a meaning to the information, you can connect with something familiar, you can visualize a picture, or you can look for patterns, okay? So my first one is I have an extension for my, what's it called? I rarely use it because no one really calls my landline anymore. Messages at home, okay? So my extension is 8710, okay? So as you can see by the picture, those who really know me would know where that comes from. So the 87 happens to be my favorite hockey player. And the 10 comes from, and some of you don't know this moment, I do very well because it happens to be my third favorite moment. Above is marriage and kids. But this happens to be my favorite moment, which is when the men's gold medal, the men's hockey team won the gold medal in 2010. So I remember my PIN number because Sidney Crosby scored the golden goal in 2010. Okay, so I see some giggles, good. So a little woo, but I never forgot that PIN number. Okay, because it has a meaning. My cell number, which is 760. Now the 7 and the 6, I won't explain that because it's a little woo-woo, but there's an 87 in the last 4 digits. So I did some funny numbers with that. And again, the 87. It was like, oh, hey, got that one. my bank card is 16 digits. So what I was able to do was to figure out all the different hockey players that I like and memorize 16 digits. So again, I'm clearly a hockey fan. And I met this woman that I work with in Halliburton, Kestrel, and I thought that's such a cool name, but an odd name. And I would, because I don't work with her often, I would not. So the way I remember her name is two ways. There's a bird, a beautiful bird that's named Kestrel. And so I saw the bird, and so now I won't forget because it's a gorgeous bird. But also there was a band in the 80s, because I'm old, that's called Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark. And that's how I remembered her name. I connected it with something familiar. And then I had to get a new license plate. And so it's CKKV. So I thought, okay, Chicken Kiev, and it's 136. So I thought, so I'm standing at the Service Canada, and I'm like, okay, I got to remember this because it's really important that people remember their license plate. It's important because if you're somewhere and you got to sign in, you kind of don't want to run out and look. So I said, okay, well, Chicken Kiev. And then I once had 36-inch hips, like a long time ago. So, so that's how I connected my license plate. So this is where practice and elaborate sort of come together, and they're great strategies. They're fabulous strategies. And I find now that you don't use it for everything. So I caution you, it's not important to remember everything. It's important to remember the stuff that you need to remember. So I'm not saying that every time you meet someone you need to remember their name, because that's just not reasonable. But if you need to remember the name, these are some strategies to help you. Because if I go to a party, I just let go. I just walk up and go, I'm sorry, I forgot your name. And they're like, it's okay, I forgot your name. And we're all good. But if I'm working with someone or I'm building a relationship or something, I really kind of want to, remember a name, then now I've got some strategies to help. This is a great one. So as I mentioned before, sometimes we don't pay attention to what we're doing. So this strategy is really about focus. So if you want to remember to do something or want to remember that you have just done something, the process is this. You stop, say what you are doing to yourself or out loud. There are times where I literally am talking out loud so that other people don't bother me. They're like, oh, leave her alone. She's doing the laundry. We can't disturb her. Or I watch or imagine myself doing it. So there are times where it's like, it's really important that I do this thing in the future. So I literally will sit and imagine myself doing it because it's so important that I get it done. Now, it's not everything. I'm really okay to go up and down the stairs a couple times because I could use the steps. But there are times where it's really important. I do need to take a certain medication because if I don't, I end up getting a headache. So it's like, no, I can't forget this because I don't want to have a headache later. So it's like, no, take your medication. So you stop, you say what you are doing. And so you can do this with future events and you can do it with what you've done. So here's where it's helpful. Turning off the stove. So the challenge we have is that we are not paying attention to what we're doing. We're always thinking about other things. I've mentioned that before. So locking the door, cooking is a good example when we're not always paying attention. Turning off the stove. When we're in the bathroom, did we turn off the tap? And then dropping off our stuff. We're so easily distracted. So this is where if I'm leaving the house right? And I recommended this to people in groups, is that if you're doing your walkthrough before you leave the house, you walk through the kitchen, stove is off, taps are off, door is locked. And then as you're locking the door, you're standing at the door. I'm locking the door, turning the key. Check the door, door's locked. And as you say it out loud or in your head, and you feel that door is locked, later on, when you have a moment of, oh no, did I lock the door? You can actually visualize and go, oh no, I did lock the door. Because I remember, because I was watching myself do it. And so these are strategies because you're paying attention to what you're doing. It just takes seconds. It doesn't take a long time. And it saves you that anxiety of worrying if you did. The iron is if you have those little anxieties, and they're not uncommon, right? There are times I will be sitting at work going, oh, did I? And I really have to just get quiet and go, wait a second. And I literally try to trace my steps and watch myself walk through the house. Yeah, no, I did that. But that takes a little bit of confidence and trust in yourself. And if you don't trust yourself, this is where it gets a bit scary, right? So that's what this process is. And it's a game changer if you practice this. I am far less distracted than I used to be. And if I do this and it doesn't work, it means there's something else going on, and I really don't want to do it. So it's a sign that I need to just take a break. So the other aspect of this program is we talk about all these other issues to help keep our brain healthy. The one that I'm not going to be talking about today, I won't be talking about these either, but one that I'm actually going to be doing a presentation on in July is the impact of stress on mood and cognition. So I hope that people tune in for that one, because it's a huge one, and it's very, very important. But as we go through these strategies, we also link up the importance of, good sleep, healthy eating, exercise, social activities, cognitive activities. And I know that Sarah and Shelby and Carolyn in the past have talked about these issues as well. And here's the kicker. With all the research that's out there, this is the best way to address, issues around dementia and to keep us healthy. There's no panacea, there's no silver bullet. So when we take care of ourselves and stay healthy and decrease our chances of significant health issues like diabetes, vascular issues, all those kinds of things, we actually improve, and this is how we do it. So this is what this program promotes. So thank you so much for listening. And now let's have some fun and try these strategies and answer any questions that you might have. Because I can tell you that these strategies are so helpful, period. They apply because it's never too early to start. If I had my way, we would be starting in high school, because I think it's just never too early to teach really good habits. And we're far too much of a distractible society now that I think it's important we get focused. So thank you very much.
Emma, would you like me to stop recording now?
Yes, please.
Okay.